It's around 8 p.m. A 10-year-old boy named Arav is playing near the edge of his village. The sun has completely set, and he is entirely absorbed in his game. Step by step, without realizing it, his focus pulls him away from the familiar dirt paths of his home. He crosses an invisible boundary, leaving the open village behind and wandering directly into the thick, overgrown tree line. Inside, the environment changes instantly. The trees are massive, their thick, twisted branches interlocking overhead to completely obscure the moon. Not a single beam of light reaches the forest floor. A child's simple distraction has stripped away all familiar landmarks. That absolute lack of spatial awareness is exactly how fatal vulnerability begins. Deprived of visual orientation, Arav's other senses heighten. He stops. The air feels heavy, and an absolute, unnatural stillness blankets the woods. The only things breaking that silence are the steady, mechanical chirps of crickets in the underbrush, and the sporadic hooting of owls hidden deep in the branches. Slowly, the reality of his situation sets in. He is completely disoriented, separated from his family, and entirely alone. Trembling, he starts taking slow, hesitant steps deeper into the brush, hoping to find a familiar path. When humans are stripped of community and visual safety, the brain bypasses logical reasoning. It reverts directly to an ancient, primal fear of the dark. Then the environment reacts to his presence. A distinct crunch of leaves sounds directly behind him. They are slow, deliberate footsteps matching his exact pace. Arav's heart rate spikes. His muscles lock up, paralyzing him in place as he waits for the pursuer to close the distance. He forces himself to turn around, bracing for whoever is following him. But he finds absolutely nothing. Just empty, dark woods. An identifiable predator triggers a fight-or-flight response, but an invisible presence hijacks the imagination. The inability to confirm a threat generates a psychological terror far deeper than facing a visible enemy. Desperate, he pushes forward a few more paces until the dense trees give way to a small clearing. Sitting in the center is a rusted, heavily decayed wooden swing set. The air is completely dead, yet the broken wooden seat sways rhythmically, back and forth on its own, without any physical force pushing it. As the rusty chains creak, a second impossible sound cuts through the damp air, the slow, echoing laughter of a child, bouncing off the surrounding trees. When the basic laws of physics are visibly shattered in front of you, the brain stops trying to rationalize. The only remaining instinct is blind, frantic flight. Arav bolts. He sprints blindly through the brush, but the geometry of the forest seems to warp around him. The faster he runs, the thicker the trees become, aggressively closing in and trapping him in a loop. He stops, gasping for air. Standing directly in his path, between the dark trunks, is a stark white silhouette. Long, unkempt hair hangs down its face, dragging against the dirt and dead leaves. From behind the tangled mass, two intensely glowing red eyes fixate on the paralyzed, crying boy. In this moment of total despair, a single memory cuts through the panic. Arav recalls a strict lesson from his grandmother. When faced with absolute evil, invoke the name of the divine. Through chattering teeth, he forces out a trembling prayer. Instantly, a heavy gust of wind rips through the clearing. The entity shrieks, violently turning into thick, dark smoke, dissolving into the canopy. In moments of inexplicable horror, inherited cultural wisdom serves a dual purpose. It provides a psychological anchor to ground a panicked mind, and sometimes it acts as a literal shield. Minutes later, the oppressive darkness is finally pierced by bright, sweeping beams of light. A search party from the village, armed with heavy flashlights, breaks through the brush and pulls the exhausted boy to safety. By the next morning, the village elders sit Arav down. They explain that the woods harbor a dark history, heavily documented in local oral tradition, centering on a restless spirit bound to those very trees. This history forms the foundation of their strictest local law. No resident is permitted to step past the edge of the village after the sun goes down. We often dismiss local superstitions as irrational fears. In reality, they are highly practical protective boundaries, codified into folklore by generations who learned exactly how to survive their environment. For Arav, the lesson was permanent. He grew up, but he never approached that tree line alone again, in daylight or dark. The village has modernized over the decades, but the woods remain untouched. The entity is still there, resting in the heavy shadows at dusk, waiting. Even today, locals issue a very specific warning to anyone traveling the perimeter road at night. If you linger too long, you will hear the echoing laughter of a child and the steady crunch of footsteps trailing directly behind you. A human being can escape a haunted space, but the darkness embedded within that space is permanent, patiently waiting for the next wanderer to lose their way.